All right. Hi, my name is Rosie. I am a program assistant at LEAP, Lifestyle Empowerment for Alzheimer's Prevention at the KU Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And today we're going to be talking all about neuroplasticity and how you can rewire your brain at any age. We'll start with just a bit of a background on Alzheimer's disease and what we do at the KU Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. We'll talk about what neuroplasticity is and some of its key roles in brain health. We'll talk about how neuroplasticity varies across the lifespan, though maybe not quite as much as you think it would. We'll discuss how neuroplasticity specifically relates to Alzheimer's disease prevention. And finally, we'll talk about some key ways to increase your brain's plasticity at any age. After I close the door real quick because there's some noise outside. Okay, let's get started. So dementia is specifically an umbrella term that describes a wide range of conditions that cause memory and thinking changes. So in addition to Alzheimer's disease, there are types of dementia such as frontotemporal dementia and vascular dementia, and they all have different symptoms and somewhat different causes. However, Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia, and it accounts for 60 to 80% of cases. While the specific cause or causes of Alzheimer's are not currently known, it is pretty clear that there's an interplay of both genetic and lifestyle factors that contribute to the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's disease is sort of a major issue because 13% of all adults over the age of 65 will develop this condition. So the KU Alzheimer's Disease Research Center is one of only 33 NIH-accredited Alzheimer's disease research centers. It is a fairly stringent qualification that we renew every several years. And the mission of the ADRC is to improve the lives of patients and families with Alzheimer's disease by eliminating the disease through its treatment and prevention. So we do truly believe that a cure will be possible. It's not a matter of if, but when. Here is some of the stuff that goes on at the KU ADRC. As you might imagine, we do a lot of research, both for individuals with and without cognitive impairments. So we have our discovery and innovation studies, which kind of look at people's brain health characteristics over time, for example, and how brain health changes over time in a large group of people. We have our investigational medicine trials. So that would be trials of some of the drugs that have recently come out that you may have heard of, drugs hoping to target some of the proteins involved in Alzheimer's disease, in addition to treating the condition in other ways. We have exercise and lifestyle intervention studies focused on lifestyle changes. And we also have psychosocial interventions that fall within this realm of research. So for example, programs that help support caregivers are part of our research. Then in addition to that, we have a wide range of resources, including our My Alliance for Brain Health newsletter, if that's something you're interested in. We provide brain tips and updates on research. We provide support groups for caregivers and individuals who are diagnosed, and we have a range of community programs. Last but not least, what I assist with is LEAP, Lifestyle Empowerment for Alzheimer's Prevention. This is our community education program that is specifically aimed at preventing and or slowing cognitive decline through lifestyle changes. This is a free program, and if you'd like to learn more about anything that we do at the KU ADRC, feel free to head over to kubrainhealth.org or call 913-588-05. So you might be wondering what the relationship between lifestyle factors and Alzheimer's exactly is. And we know that Alzheimer's has clear defining traits, or fairly clear defining traits that are used in diagnosis. So Alzheimer's typically will have specific proteins, including amyloid and tau, that build up in the brain. And it tends to affect certain areas first, such as the hippocampus, which is involved in memory and learning. However, its causes are less clear, but it is believed to be potentially caused by this confluence of different factors. such as our genes, our lifestyle, and potentially some metabolic changes, which could also relate to genes and lifestyle. And we know that lifestyle changes really do appear to help reduce risk in many individuals. So, for example, there was a large study in JAMA Neurology a couple years ago that found that individuals who got 10,000 steps a day appear to have a 50% overall lower risk of Alzheimer's disease. While that is a correlational study, so we can't imply that there was a direct cause, it's pretty clear that lifestyle and Alzheimer's risk are closely related for many people. So just a quick overview of the types of things and goals we talk about in LEAP, which will relate back to neuroplasticity. Our programs are geared at sort of empowering individuals to move more, get fit, eat healthy, sleep well, stay socially and cognitively connected, and to manage stress. And I won't go too deep into any of these specific pillars right now, but one thing I just wanted to mention here was that all of these factors can help boost the brain's resilience to damage and neuroplasticity, which is what we'll be talking about today. So there's that connection there. All right, so on to neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is our brain's pretty amazing ability to restructure itself by generating new cells and forming new connections. So a simpler example of this would literally be learning someone's name. When you learn a person's name, you may have a cluster of neurons associated with the sound of their name, a cluster of neurons associated with perhaps the image of their face, and those fire together, those groups of brain cells fire together until they form connections, allowing you to retain that person's name. And so that's just a basic example, but neuroplasticity in sort of small and big ways, as I'll talk about, is an essential feature of the brain, as you might imagine, at all stages of life. Scientists used to kind of emphasize that neuroplasticity was really only available to younger people, which the language around that has now really changed. And it's clear that higher levels of neuroplasticity are available during all parts of the lifespan. Neuroplasticity in general, higher levels of it are correlated with better brain health. And importantly, neuroplasticity is influenced by our daily habits, especially sleep, nutrition, and exercise, but there are many more. At the bottom there, you can see just a little, this is not a real image, it's an artist's illustration of some neurons forming some new connections between each other. And neuroplasticity has these two key roles that are very important. The first role is learning from new experiences, as I kind of illustrated just with that simple name example, but it can be more complex skills as well as regaining or maintaining function after injury. I want to show you this short video. I think it might be a little blurry, and I am not affiliated with this particular researcher or anything, but this researcher grows brain cells in a lab condition. And this was a recording of brain cells forming new connections under a microscope. So new connections like these are formed constantly when we learn new information, but also when the brain kind of makes adjustments and rewires things by itself. I thought this was really striking. The neurons almost look like creatures, which I think feels a little weird, but it's still so cool to see that really in action. So we're forming those new connections all the time. Ooh, sorry about that. There we go. A second key function of neuroplasticity is regaining or maintaining function after injury. And this is also, though it will vary a lot depending on the situation, a pretty extraordinary ability that our brains may have. And so, for example, in this image, when one area of the brain that is used in language production was damaged during a stroke, a somewhat similar area on the right side was actively rewired to perform the functions that were lost due to the damage. And again, our ability to do this will vary a lot depending on the situation and other factors, but it's pretty amazing that the brain can take areas of itself that are not typically used for a function and regain that function in some cases. So neuroplasticity is pretty cool, but I wanted to mention that a balance of plasticity and stability is key to brain health. A brain with a completely stable or fixed structure, so no neuroplasticity, would not be able to learn any new information and would not be able to recover from damage. So there would be literally no new connections, no new brain cells being grown, no ability to rewire or adapt. However, some stability is necessary. So if we had our brains being, highly transformed all the time by our different interactions, by things that we learned, or just spontaneously, it would be hard to retain key skills and details, and for our brains to be efficient. So really a balance of plasticity and stability is what our brains kind of innately strive for. That said, most adults can benefit from increased neuroplasticity. So a little bit of information about neuroplasticity developmentally. Kids can learn positive skills and habits quite quickly. However, they may learn some harmful habits just as easily. And this is because our brains tend to be more adaptable, more plastic in childhood as we develop our first models of how the world works, whereas they become a bit less adaptable and flexible in adulthood. And again, this has some positives. It helps us to preserve strategies and insights that we have collected over the years. Here's an overview of kind of what happens throughout the stages of our lives in terms of neuroplasticity. Again, I want to reiterate that up until just a few years ago, people were claiming that significant neuroplasticity and brain adaptation was really not possible past adolescence. However, we now know that that is essentially false. So during childhood, we do have the highest level of plasticity and the most critical periods. These are periods during which super key abilities develop, such as sight. So the brain has these specific developmental windows that allow those key sort of features of our cognition and our senses to grow. In adolescence, high plasticity is somewhat retained. There are some sex and gender differences, actually, that I won't go into here, but I think that's sort of interesting, but overall still high plasticity with some critical periods. In earlier or mid-adulthood, again, the plasticity does continue. It's lowered a little bit. And it's thought that there may even be some critical periods during this time, even though people didn't really used to believe that there could be many sort of key junctures where the brain experiences more growth. And then last but not least, definitely not least, in older adulthood, we still have plenty of neuroplasticity, though it is a little bit lower. And interestingly, in older adulthood, we also happen to have more symmetrical brain activation. So where the left and right hemispheres of the brain are just more active when doing different tasks. And while it's not fully known why this occurs, this may actually help facilitate neuroplasticity, facilitate the formations of new connections between different parts of the brain. So let's talk a bit about the relationship between neuroplasticity and Alzheimer's disease. This is a complex topic, but for a variety of reasons, having brain cells that are more susceptible to damage, having a lower production of new brain cells, and not having enough connections to compensate for mild damage or impairment are all risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. A sort of strong example of this that has different contributing factors, but that still relates to neuroplasticity, is that some individuals may have no cognitive impairment at all during their lifetime, but upon autopsy, it's discovered that they appear to have advanced Alzheimer's disease. Again, this could be caused for various reasons, but one theory is that if you have high neuroplasticity and strong cognitive reserve, which I mentioned at the bottom there, that's kind of the total amount of connections that you have throughout your brain, you can compensate so effectively for some of the damage caused by those proteins in Alzheimer's disease, amyloid and tau, that you never exhibit symptoms. The theory is, at least, that your brain has continued to adapt for your entire life. And so when we boost neuroplasticity, we have more resilient individual brain cells, more brain cells are created, and as I was explaining, our current connections can help make up for damage, whether larger or smaller. So with all of that in mind, here are some key ways to help increase our neuroplasticity. I want to emphasize that all of the lifestyle factors that I mentioned at the beginning do relate to neuroplasticity in some way, and that's one reason why they're good for our brain health. However, if I had to pick three, they would be getting regular exercise, especially aerobic and strength training, eating a brain healthy diet. I'll talk more about the specifics of that in a couple minutes, but one key thing is to eat plenty of quote unquote healthy fats that will support your brain cell health. And last but not least, sleep hygiene, so that we can hopefully get more restful and sufficient sleep, which is key to neuroplasticity. When we talk about healthy habits, especially ones that are, kind of as, often repeated as these are, doing these specific things is not going to be new to anybody, right? It can be helpful to mention that healthy habits really fuel each other. So for example, I sometimes struggle to sleep, but I enjoy exercise. And so I keep in mind that exercising frequently can help improve sleep quality. Here are a couple additional details about why regular exercise is linked to lower Alzheimer's disease risk and can help support our neuroplasticity. So exercise has a lot of brain health benefits that can reduce risk, including helping with our blood circulation and cardiovascular health, which has its own semi-independent links to Alzheimer's disease. So there's kind of a wide variety of reasons why exercise can help protect brain health and reduce Alzheimer's risk. But specifically in terms of neuroplasticity, exercise in several studies appears to help the brain produce new cells. This applies to both aerobic exercise and strength training. And so what certain researchers have found is that when individuals exercise more, they're producing more of a hormone called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which instructs the brain to produce new brain cells. And in addition to that, those new brain cells are often produced in the hippocampus, which, as I mentioned before, is often one of the first areas affected by Alzheimer's disease. So that's one key reason why exercise may help reduce risk and promote brain health. Just like as a quick overview of the ideal sort of exercise guidelines, and again, these are ideal. I certainly don't necessarily do all of these all the time, but they're recommended for quote unquote optimal brain health. That would be 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity aerobic exercise, like walking, 2 to 3 days a week of strength training. This could include lifting weights or body weight exercises, as well as daily balance and flexibility training. The daily balance and flexibility may not necessarily have the same direct brain health benefits as aerobic and strength training, but it helps us maintain sort of the ability, the mobility needed to perform those key types of exercises. So also very important. And a simple change to make in this area would be to begin with a short, brisk walk if you're sort of not already doing that or want to increase your exercise. Nutrition is an especially complex topic, so I can't go super deep into, what quote unquote healthy eating entails right now. But I can tell you that, so specifically a Mediterranean style diet can help to decrease Alzheimer's disease risk and boost brain health. There's a lot of sort of conversation around which diet is best for brain health, and often it will be individualized. But a Mediterranean diet is, or rather a Mediterranean style of eating has a lot of research behind it compared to some other diets as being good for brain health. And so a Mediterranean style of eating typically includes a lot of vegetables and fruits, a lot of whole grains, plenty of healthy fats, and lean protein, as well as lower fat dairy. You can see we have our own sort of plate model that we use at LEAP on the left, where vegetables are the majority of the plate, then starch and fruit and protein, or starch or fruit and protein, and then finally healthy fats. So in addition to kind of those aspects, some of the key tenets of this form of eating are that it is nutrient dense. That typically means having a lot of vegetables and fruits, low glycemic, so helps to maintain stable blood sugar. There are a lot of kind of complex connections between blood sugar, cardiovascular health, and brain health, which is why balanced blood sugar can really help support brain health. And last but not least, this style of eating is rich in healthy fats. I want to highlight the healthy fats because a large portion of our brain is actually made up of fats. And essentially, our brain cells need a lot of fat to function. And so by eating healthier fats, such as omega-3s, we can really potentially help support our brain health and help those cells kind of have the structure, integrity they need to be healthy and form lots of new connections. So a simpler change to make in this area could be starting to incorporate more of those healthy fats in your diet. Some examples of healthy fat-rich foods would include extra virgin olive oil, nuts and seeds, avocado, or fatty fish, but there are others as well. A side note is that we do also encourage typically limiting processed food and sugar when possible, just because those can, in some individuals, contribute to inflammation, both in the body and the brain. And one side effect of that inflammation can be reduced neuroplasticity. So all of these things kind of work together. Last but not least, sleep is essential for neuroplasticity. And it's not really an exaggeration to say that sleep hygiene, or at least quality sleep, can help the brain to rewire itself overnight. Obviously, you're not going to have a massive transformation in your brain health in one night, but especially during slower wave sleep, our brains do a lot of active rewiring and growing. In addition to that, something really interesting that kind of does and doesn't relate to neuroplasticity, but is good to know about, is that sleep actually clears amyloid from the brain. So amyloid, as you may or may not know, is one of those key proteins in Alzheimer's disease. And during sleep, we clear amyloid from the cerebrospinal fluid. It's like literally drained out of the brain before it is able to build up in the brain. So that's another reason why sleep can be so important for brain health. But specifically for neuroplasticity, it's for facilitating the rewiring and new connections and growth that happen. Now, I'm saying sleep hygiene because, sleep hygiene is something that oftentimes we can change and work on. But I do also want to acknowledge that with this factor, like with other factors, our behaviors don't always create the specific changes that we may immediately want, and sleep can be especially challenging as someone who struggles with sleep myself. But that said, sleep hygiene, which is the habits and practices and the environment that help support our sleep, really can help many individuals sleep better and improve our sleep quality and length when needed. Some of the key things that we suggest are to simply wind down before bed, to try a short bedtime routine if you have not really done so before. That could be as simple as brushing your teeth, putting on pajamas, reading a book, and turning the lights out. But having a specific routine that you do every night can really be sometimes more helpful than it seems. Having a sleep environment that is conducive to sleep is also vital. And one thing to note is that the ideal sleep temperature is typically between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. This can sometimes be hard to achieve in the summer, but it is something to keep in mind. Limiting light and sound can also make a big difference because we continue to process light and sound during sleep. And you may be awoken by light and sound during sleep without even remembering it. So if you're able to cut out light and sound that in your bedroom, that's very helpful, or outside. And if there is light and sound that's not really out of your control, we recommend a sleeping mask and earplugs. I do have specific brand recommendations if anyone would like those. But sort of a simple change to get started with changes in sleep hygiene would be to avoid screens and to dim lights 30 minutes before bed. This really helps us get ready for sleep and produce more melatonin. Here's a quick recap of what we've covered today. Neuroplasticity is our brain's ability to rewire itself, and it is present during all stages of life. It's a key feature of the brain. Its key roles are to help us learn from new experiences and to respond to injury. Neuroplasticity can help us decrease the risk of Alzheimer's by specifically increasing the brain's resilience, for example, by having lots of connections that are available for rewiring when needed. And lifestyle can make a big difference in neuroplasticity. So to increase neuroplasticity, it can be helpful to exercise regularly, to eat a healthy diet, and to practice good sleep hygiene, among other factors. So that's the information I have for you about our key topic today. I do want to provide just a quick overview of our program if anyone is interested in learning a bit more about it. So as I mentioned, I am an assistant at LEAP, Lifestyle Empowerment for Alzheimer's Prevention. And this is our community education program where we translate biomedical research findings related to lifestyle into everyday strategies that can help protect brain health. The core of our program is our live interactive Zoom courses. These are completely free. Everything is free except for the Brain Power Blueprint book. In addition to those courses where we teach sort of key strategies for boosting brain health, we have standalone webinars. Do I have the book? I do happen to have the book. I was just reading up on healthy fats this morning. We have our Brain Power Blueprint book, which provides a lot of the key information that we also go over in our main course, Brain Health Bootcamp, but that also just has a lot of additional tips and resources for individuals who may want to dive deeper into the topics. It's not required for the course or anything. And we have a variety of other resources as well. But if you'd like to learn about any of our programs, please head over to kubrainhealth.org/leap. And if you're interested in sharing any of this information with your community, please feel free to email me. I believe my email is at the end, or our email, at kuadrcleap@kumc.edu. It is at the end, so no need to write that down. Our key course coming up soon is Brain Health Bootcamp. This is, again, it has weekly Zoom classes with Q&A, where every week we talk about a specific lifestyle factor, how it affects brain health, and changes you can make in that area to slow or to prevent decline. And we cover several of the things that we discussed today. So we talk about sleep, nutrition, exercise, physical activity, which is separate from exercise, cognitive engagement, social engagement, and stress management. So it's really comprehensive and empowering people to understand how these factors affect their brain. In addition, this course provides some goal-setting support and worksheets. And if you're interested in sharing this information or signing up yourself, our next class will begin July 11th. So feel free to head over to kubrainhealth.org/leap if interested, or reach out to us at kuadrcleap@kumc.edu. Okay, thank you so much for listening today. I hope you found this presentation interesting and informative. Please feel free again to reach out to either myself, I'm Rosie Pasqualini, or our program manager, the awesome Rachel Sandoval, RDN, at kuadrcleap@kumc.edu. Last but not least, again, our site is kubrainhealth.org/leap. Thank you. Any questions? Does the noise from a fan affect sleep quality? That's a good question. I've read a little bit of research on that, but I don't remember the specifics, unfortunately. Basically, yes, but only if it's significantly loud. So if it's fairly quiet and you don't feel like it's affecting your sleep quality, it is probably fine. The types of noises that tend to affect sleep quality more are going to be intermittent sounds. So if there's a conversation in the hallway, for example. Do you address cognitive challenges of benefit? Yes, that is a great question. Talking specifically about cognitive engagement was something that I considered including in today's webinar, but ended up not doing. So basically, cognitive engagement, which is doing things like engaging in hobbies, having new experiences, learning new things, those things do all actively rewire the brain, and they are correlated then with higher neuroplasticity, as well as lower risk of Alzheimer's disease in some cases. So we talk about cognitive engagement in our Brain Health Bootcamp course, actually, and it is considered to be one of the pillars of lifestyle and brain health. However, the current research kind of suggests that those other factors, the more, I don't exactly want to say more physical factors, but stuff like sleep and nutrition may have the highest benefit because those will promote some rewiring, even if you're not very cognitively engaged at all. Yeah, no problem. So basically, yes, very helpful, just not, if you had to rank them, cognitive engagement would not be at the very top, but it's still important for brain health. Do your participant ask about brain games? Sometimes. I actually gave a presentation about brain games a couple weeks ago. With brain games, I'm trying to think of a way to make this, like, I don't know, concise. There's a lot of research on brain games, and basically they can be good for brain health, whether that's computerized games or crossword puzzles or Sudoku or all of that fun stuff. They're not thought to be more effective than other types of engagement. Again, like learning a new hobby or even visiting a new place or having an engaging conversation. But if you are specifically curious about computerized brain training games, which is something that will come up for our participants moderately often, the main one we recommend is Brain HQ. There's a lot of controversy, as you may be familiar with, behind brain games and brain training, but Brain HQ has a lot of research behind it as being good for the brain. Okay, feel free to add any other questions in the chat or unmute yourself, but if there are no other questions, again, thank you for being here. Please feel free to reach out to us, KUADRC@kumc.edu, if you have any questions about our program or would like to share program details with anybody. I see an additional question. Thank you. How do you encourage someone who's been diagnosed with AD to cut back on high glycemic? That can be a tough question, and I may redirect you to our program manager, Rachel Sandoval, if you would be interested in that, because she is a registered dietitian and a nutrition expert. What I would say is that it can help to, be honest and direct about the fact that cutting back on those foods can help. And also encourage, certain food substitutions that are still tasty, but maybe a little bit lower glycemic, or to help balance out high glycemic foods with lower glycemic foods, even if they're not cutting back that much on the high glycemic foods. So sort of a classic example of this culturally is milk and cookies. The protein in the milk helps balance out the higher sugar levels and potential blood sugar spike of the cookies. But that can be a complex topic when talking to an individual who is diagnosed or looking to reduce their risk and who may not want to make changes. So I can also connect you with our manager who may have some additional thoughts on that specific question. Feel free to, if you would like, Kai, you can put your email in the chat or email us, and I would be happy to connect you with Rachel. Okay, are there webinars specific to alcohol use and brain health? We don't have any of those, and one reason is because the research is changing a lot. We typically recommend, not exactly recommend, but we say that it's okay to have about 1 to 2 drinks per week. However, while that is basically true, there's essentially mixed research about how alcohol impacts AD risk. So some research, as you may have heard of, says that, a glass of wine a week helps reduce risk. Some research say that it has no effect, and some research is more like any level of alcohol could contribute to risk. So there's ongoing research on that, but we typically say those 1 to 2 glasses or drinks a week is fine. The wine research was debunked, I heard. Yes, that's what I heard too. You may know more about that specific topic than me, actually, but it's a complex topic.
I think what I remember is they said what they found is the participants were higher income, and that higher income played a bigger role for the protection against AD than drinking a glass of wine.
That makes a lot of sense. I think it's really surprising when researchers don't control for that. It seems.
No kidding, right? Especially in aging, because we know that social economic status is critical to aging outcomes. So,
Thanks. I'm just writing down the email really fast. But again, thank you, everybody. And yeah, I appreciate you being here. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions.